Hey guys, today I want to talk about talismans again and make a tier list out of it. It's already 6 months since I did my last talisman tier list, and I think with the knowledge we have now, we can give more accurate information of which talismans are good and which stats even will be desirable, right? So without further ado, let's jump right into it. So the first talisman that we will talk about is Saint Charm. Saint Charm is a really good talisman on supports who have two non-attack skills, for example Seren or Mena. And in PvE, they are not attacking that often. They will cycle through their abilities in a short time frame. I think Seren is a bit more complicated because she has long cooldowns. So it might be okay to go on other talismans, but overall, it's a very reliable way to get chain points for supporters, especially when they only have like 3-4 turns overall, because you want to finish the fight in 25 turns. So definitely a good PvE charm, the best in slot for supporters basically. So next up on our list is Assassin's Charm, which is a PvP talisman and not bad one because it generates 30 action points if you're using your ultimate. While it doesn't happen often, this is good to chain from your S3 skill into a S2 or S1 burst. So certain units will definitely want it, especially if you are a ranger, striker or mage, because they don't generate as fast action points as defenders or healers do. So if you can chain your S3 into S2 or S1, this one is really decent, and while not one of the strongest, still a very good one. Next up on our list is a PvE item, Executioner's Charm. This charm is mostly PvE, and I personally think it's mostly a filler. It has some stages and it will shine. For example, if you go for a Psy Guild Raid and you put in that he will early enrage, or for example, if you fight meteors who enrage at 20% HP loss already, right? So it definitely has places where it can shine, but most of the time the enemy won't be long in the enrage mode, so you can't really benefit a lot of it. So I think this is more of a filler for PvE chain point generation. While 12 points are a lot, it's not a long time period in which you can generate the points. So overall a filler which can be good if you have good main stats on it. So next on the list is the Talisman Gladiator's Charm. Gladiator's Charm is mostly a filler item simply because the 12 chain points you generate per ultimate is not generated for a long time after using your ultimate. There are some exception units who can ultimate in 2-turn cycles like Demiurge Drakan, for example, but they already have other options, and I will tell you one option which will always be the best in certain situations. And while Gladiator's Charm is a nice filler, the moments where it can shine, for example, if you go for 9-turn kills white, or you try to one-shot as fast as possible, this charm can shine because you generate a lot of chain points with one skill. But other than that, it's mostly a filler and you have no reason to run it currently at all. Next up on the list, we have the Mage's Charm. Mage's Charm is my favorite PvP talisman simply because of its reliability. It says that it will generate 30 action points for the user when you are attacking all enemies. This is something which is kinda normal, especially on rangers, mages and strikers, right? They will have abilities which will attack all enemies even if it's just a debuff like for Tamara. So this is a very reliable way and often does the same as the Assassin's Charm when the Assassin's Charm targets all enemies. So it will feel like you can use it on more units than the Assassin's Charm and makes it just a bit stronger. So I definitely think if you have this, it's worth using the gems on it. Like, you will not find many better talismans than that, especially for the offensive walls. Next up on the list is the Prophet's Charm. This item is actually hard to evaluate. It got buffed a few months ago, and it can definitely shine in certain situations where you could say, hey, I can justify putting it in PvE. For now, I will still put it in filler, because by the time this item feels usable, your gear is so good that the only reason this item is so good is because you're gonna one-shoot enemies, right? You're gonna one-shoot the bosses. So I think this item is just nice to have on certain units who don't get many turns, who have like 100. For example, these Stella might only get 2 turns overall. So you might as well use this one because you can't generate chain points if she doesn't quit. Maybe she has a low quit rate, right? Maybe she is not fighting Dark Element for the Sage Charm. So there are certain situations where this item can actually be decent. So I definitely put it as the highest here, especially on units who don't quit well and don't benefit a lot from the other charms. So keep that in mind. This item is better than it looks like, but you need good gear. And if you're not at the good gear stage, this item will be pretty much useless. Hey, you watched my content until now, and I really want to thank you for that. If you could leave a like or subscribe, you could help me to grow my channel even further. And with that, back to the video. Next up on the list, we have the Rogue's Charm, which is undoubtedly one of the strongest, if not tied for the strongest, with the Sage Charm in PvE. It generates on every crit the unit makes 10 chain points. This counts only towards active abilities as far as I know, so as far as I recall, it doesn't count on counter, but I'm not sure anymore, honestly. I don't do that much PvE anymore, or I don't look too often into it, but overall, being able to generate 10 chain points every turn with your unit because you have 3 offensive abilities which all can quit is extremely reliable, especially if you are the one who can choose how much crit rate is built, and you can use Valentine and Tamara to buff crit rate. So this overall is one of the most reliable way to generate 10 chain points every turn. So this is one of the most and best units, talismans you can have, especially in the early game when you start with Noah. So overall, I highly suggest picking this one up in the early stages from the deeps. And yeah, definitely one of the luckier ones if you get them in the Abyss. Next up on the list is the Sage Charm, which is tied or maybe even the strongest PvE talisman. As you can see for both, it depends on the situation. The Rogue's Charm can be used on all elements, while the Sage Charm can only be used for the adventurous element. But to make up for that, you don't need to quit anymore, right? So this can be especially good on units like Veronica, who can't quit, but who also doesn't have passive ability, non-attack abilities like Meneth for the Sage Charm, right? So this is definitely one of the best, if not the best in slot item in PvE for certain defenders or strikers who don't rely on crit. And it's definitely for the new runner the best in PvE, right? So definitely think of these two as the best ones you can get and the only ones you are long-term wise interested in. You can also say Sage Charm, okay, let's take all 3 of them. Those are the ones you want. And you want mostly the first 2, the Saints and the Rogue's Charm, because those 2 are the ones who can be the most reliable depending on the dungeon. So next up on the list is the Undertaker's Charm. And Undertaker's Charm is the reason why we have Avoid in the tier list. I don't think that this talisman is necessarily bad, but it lives kinda with the problem that it sounds mostly PvE. Because if you have the option between Assassin's Charm and Mage Charm, most likely you will choose those 2. You could argue that Stella, for example, could be a one-shot ultimate, should one-shot someone with her ultimate, and with this one she could generate 30 AP, but this sounds super unreliable. So because this can trigger, as far as I know, only once, and if you kill 3 enemies you probably don't need the AP anymore anyway, this is like, it wants to be used in PvE, but the chain points alternatives are so much stronger thanks to chain point attacks that I don't feel like that you really want this at all. And sadly I got a lot of them. So if you can, avoid it unless it has a really desirable main stat that you want to use for your team. Okay, next up on the list we have the Vanguard's Charm, which is seen as one, if not the strongest talisman overall, because 50 action points are a lot and you can generate it multiple times before the unit gets a turn again, right? So it's not unheard of to have, like with defenders and healers, over 200 AP when they get their first or second turn. And it's mostly because of this charm, but also because of the passives that defenders and healers. I will just call them healers here. So with the passive ability of healers and defenders paired with Vanguards, you will generate tons of IP. You could argue that you can use it on other units like strikers too, but the problem is they usually don't have the survivability to survive multiple hits. They also usually are faster or one of the faster units built up. So Vanguard Charm, definitely, if you get it as a 6 or 5 star, call yourself lucky. It's one of the best charms. It's super reliable in IP generation, and it translates. The IP generation is so absurd that it's even good in PvE to justify running it. So yeah, that's about Vanguard Charm. And lastly, we got the Tactical Charm. Tactical Charm is a talisman which generates 20 action points whenever you attack with an advantage element, right? So I think this is not bad on paper because it could generally generate reliably every turn action points, but the number is kinda with 20 not that high compared to his sisters or brothers, right? Mage Charm, Assassin's Charm, and Vanguard Charm. So it's, for me, a filler mostly for defender units because you need multiple turns, so the unit must be a bit more on the survivability side, right, in PvP. So you could expect it on strikers, you could expect it on defenders, and that's kind of it, because why would you use it on support if you have Vanguard Charm, for example? I think this is it's a good filler, but overall you have 3 other options with Vanguard's, Mage, and Assassin's Charm that I think this will end up mostly a filler for those 3 items until you find those on higher tiers. Yeah, and this is how our tier list looks at the end. As you can see, you can definitely take the position of the talismans from left to right as an indicator which one is stronger in PvE, in PvP, or as filler. But overall, those who are put into PvE on PvP have their own category in which they are the best, while the filler might have it too. It is far more niche, and thus I would highly suggest to focus only on the 6 talisman in the PvE or PvP slot, while avoiding of course Executioner's Charm, which might be more interesting in another mode where you have to kill lots of units, but this is not the case currently. So I want to thank you all for watching the video. If you want to leave a like or a subscription, I would be super happy about it, because currently I lack a lot of subscribers, which is fine. I do it for fun, and I don't want to force people to subscribe my channel. So with that out of the way, thank you very much for watching, guys. Have a good one, and I hope you're gonna visit my channel again.